Top 5 True Scary Stories. Number 5. It's been 10 months since it happened. Death just stopped. People stopped passing. On the surface, that sounds fantastic, but the reality is far worse than anything I've ever imagined. I work as a trauma surgeon at one of the busiest hospitals in the country, and believe me, my job shifted significantly after the event. Sure, it seemed great when a 68-year-old diabetic with a heart condition comes in, complaining of chest pain. Clinically, he is dead from a heart attack, but aside from some discomfort, he's sent home to his family. They get more time together. But that's the best case scenario. 2 weeks ago, we had a burn victim come in after a high-speed collision that resulted in his semi bursting into flames. Today, we had the torso, and not much else, locked in a supply closet because all he can do is scream. No eyes, no tongue, no limbs. We don't know what to do with him. After that call, I retreated to an isolated office, popped open my flask, and downed a lot of pills. I rested my elbows on the table, feeling the pounding of my pulse in my temples as I tried to cope. And that's the kind of thing my job has become. I am more handyman than doctors. People come in with damaged parts and I try to make them functional again. An 11-year-old boy comes in after being struck by a drunk driver. More than 60% of his bones are broken, shattered. There is no way to set them back to where they were. They won't function again. In the old world, he would have died. Today, his parents take him home, to lay in bed for eternity. More pills, more booze, more pounding temples. As nursing homes fill up and overflow, many that work in the industry quit their jobs. It has become more common to see elderly laying on the side of the road or in dumpsters, or actually buried alive, as families are unable to cope with the concept of caring for somebody for eternity. More pills, more booze. My health declines. Yesterday, a normal 30-year-old woman comes in, complaining of difficulty breathing. Upon exam, we found that she had suffered a massive stroke the night before. Again, before, she would have passed. Now she has to deal with her automatic body functions shutting down, and her having to take them over consciously. Her pain was forcing air into her lungs, where before, her body did it for her. More pills, more booze. I don't feel well. My temples absolutely hammer. Today, a woman miscarried. Now we have to figure out what to do with a squirming fetus only a few months into development. In my break room, drunk and high as usual, I rub my temples, feeling stillness under my fingertips. No pulse. My eyes snap open. Shit. Number 4. Please, I'm literally begging you, I say, but the executioner only sighs and gives me a truly sorrowful look as he slides the IV into my arm. The chaplain sits beside me. Once he pushes the button, the drugs will be administered in quick sessions. Unconsciousness will occur in roughly 30 seconds, and death soon after that. He explains, even though I've heard it so many times before already. Any final words? Just again, I beg you not to do this, I say. The chaplain nods sadly, sorrowful, that I do not face my executioner with a clear conscience. That's the thing though, I haven't murdered anyone. It's been this way my entire life. I don't know why, but whenever I would accidentally hurt myself, others near me would receive the wound. I once got a paper cut in class that caused the 3 people around me to bleed from their fingers. In high school, I was in a car accident, and even though my side of the car was hit, my girlfriend developed a broken leg. I'm always very careful. I take care of myself, trying to stay in the very best of health. But when I was mugged by that trio and he shot me in the face, their faces exploded, not mine. And when the cops came, they found me kneeling beside their bodies, trying to figure out what to do, and stupidly holding their gun. Around 30 seconds after the execution started, I see both the executioner and the chaplain fall to the floor with a hard thump. I begged you, I repeat sadly. Number 3. Like most people, I had a sad childhood. Who doesn't these days? My father left before I was born, and my mother was on drugs from the day she brought me home. She slipped right back into our party lifestyle and turned our apartment into an opium den. I walked around in a drug-fueled haze for the first 5 years of my life. The smoky air flooded down the hallway and under my door, and it seemed to linger for days. My mother wasn't a bad person, just a victim of her addictions. When she did have some spare money, she would put food in the house and even sometimes buy me clothes from Goodwill. The only piece of furniture I had in my bedroom were a box spring and a mattress set and a little blue and white toy chest. Not that I had a lot of toys to put in it, just the 3 I'd got in for my birthday. One was an art kit, one was a red wagon, and the last, my pride and joy, was a doll named Betsy. Betsy was my best friend. We would have imaginary tea parties together, sleep together, take baths together, and sometimes I remember her speaking to me. Thinking about Betsy in adulthood has led me to believe that I had a severely traumatized child who was often high on opium, and therefore my memories were extremely unreliable. Still, I remember the sound of her voice, a high-pitched tinkle, and I remember the things she wanted me to do. Steal food for her, bring her forks, bring her knives, hit the bad man who slept on her couch. Always bad things that would get me in trouble. I would blame it on Betsy, but my mother would never believe me. Adults never do. Around my 6th birthday, I asked my mother for a birthday party. I wanted to invite the not nice girls from my school, serve them cake, and make them like me. I still remember standing in the kitchen with such high hopes, a glass bottle of soda shaking in my hand as I held my breath and awaited my mother's answer. She turned to me and laughed. A birthday party? Laura, that's ridiculous. I can't afford to feed 15 other kids that aren't even mine. I can barely afford to feed you. You eat like an elephant, or should I say, Betsy does. I barely get anything to eat around here. My face fell as she shook her head, mumbling something, and stumbled off. I heard the music go up in the living room as more people walked in the door. Some left, some stayed. I knew none of them. My mother threw parties all the time. What about me? I was a child. All my friends had birthday parties, and now the mean girls would know I was too poor to have one, and they would tease me even more. I felt tears start to swell, and I ran into my room and slammed the door. Betsy was laying on the bed smiling. She was always smiling. How could I forget? Just staring at me, smiling. She was going to tell me to do something bad, like steal more food or worse. This was her fault. Betsy didn't have to go to school. Betsy never got in trouble like I did. And in my 5-year-old little brain, I truly believed it was the doll, not my mother, who was the source of all my woes. I screamed in anger and threw the bottle as hard as I could at the bed. It hit Betsy and she fell to the floor. I laughed, and I dragged her into the bathroom and flew her into our bathtub, which always had water in it, as the drains were always clogged. Of course, she didn't fight back while she was under the water, but it made me feel better. A few minutes later, after I'd finished taking my anger out in humiliation on my favourite toy, I threw her in my toy chest and slammed it shut. I kicked the chest against the wall. I never wanted to see her again. I never owned another doll after that, and about a week later the police came, and 2 nice ladies took me to live in a new home in a new estate with food and toys and no drugs. The trunk went into storage and the wagon disappeared. I never saw my mother again. As I got older, my foster parents admitted she was in jail doing 25 years. I felt nothing for her anyways. I was still having nightmares because of the life she gave me. I focused on doing well in school and ignored her letters from jail. She reached out to me several times in my teens, but I always declined them. That is, until this morning. I'm 30 now, with my own children, and a husband who loves me deeply. I have a beautiful house, 2 dogs, and a career as a social worker, trying to make a difference for kids who had it bad like me. So when I got a voicemail from my mother letting me know she had been paroled and wished to speak to me, I felt stable enough to let her say her piece. Since the kids were home from school, I went out into our shed in the backyard to return my mother's call. The shed was a child's domain, and they used to play in the summer. I sat on my old toys chest, which was currently being used as a tea party table, and dialed the number she had left me. 3 rings. Hello, Laura? Hello, Mother. How are you? Oh, Laura, thank you for speaking to me. I know you have your own life now and a family. I would love to meet them someday. I just want to tell you how sorry I am for everything. You're not meeting my kids, ever. I'm going to say my piece here too. The drugs destroyed you and you took me down alongside you. Honestly, I'm surprised it took you so long to get caught. I'm not sure what you mean about being caught, Laura. I honestly know nothing. Look, it hardly matters. I do understand why you feel that way, why you would hate me and not want me to meet your little ones. I learned a lot about Jesus and forgiveness while I was away. And just, oh Laura, I'm so sorry about Betsy. Betsy, I was confused. Why would you care about her? I know, Laura, believe me, I do. It was all my fault. The drugs. And Betsy, oh God, if I had only been able to see through the haze, if I had only known. She's gone forever now, and it's all my fault. As my mother began to cry, I tapped my finger on the toy box impatiently. The drugs had clearly fried my mother's brain. Mother, why are you talking about Betsy? Why do you even care? And I know where Betsy is. What? You do? What are you talking about, Laura? Oh my God, where is she? I shifted uncomfortably. Betsy's in the trunk. I honestly thought she had hung up. I heard nothing on the other end, not even breathing. What do you mean your sister's in the trunk? Sister? What the hell are you talking about? Back on drugs so soon, Mother? Betsy is a goddamn doll. I locked her in the toy box a few days before you got arrested for possession of drugs. Laura. Oh God, no, Laura. I wasn't arrested because of the drugs. I was arrested because of Betsy's disappearance. You always called her your little doll, but we all thought you knew. Oh God, what did you do, Laura? What did you do to my baby? With no emotion, I set the phone next to me and stood up. I could hear the distant sound of my mother's anguished cries and feel the dark clutch of agony in my own chest. Memories were stringing in the back of my mind, threatening to come flooding forward. Could the trauma and the drugs really have led me to believe that small child was actually a doll? Asking for food, asking for utensils to eat with, asking me to protect her from the bad man. No. I slowly turned around and brought my eyes down to the chest. Surely it was too small. You can't fit a person in there. You couldn't. But what about a very small, starving child? What about her? If I was an investigator looking for a child, I would never consider looking in the chest. It was just too small. I knelt down to the ground and unclipped the clasp. It would be better not to look. After all I had overcome, this new life I had earned, couldn't be undone by opening this toy box. I shouldn't have done it. I should have thrown it in the landfill and forget it ever existed. I should not look inside. But I opened it. I never had a doll. My mother never could afford me to buy one. I never had a wagon either. But I did have a toy box. And a pretty blue and white toy box. And when I was 5, I drowned my 2-year-old sister and put her in it. And now my life is over. Number 2. Now, before I read this one, I want to warn you that this one is graphic. It involves rape, gore, torture, and death. We were 11 this summer. Kathy Ritter ran away, or was kidnapped, or whatever lies the newspaper were publishing that month. Between that and the Ritter family moving away after the trail ran cold, we never did find out, and eventually everyone just forgot about her. Years later, I saw her again. Not fleetingly in person, but online, in a pornographic video. I was 16 and the video looked recent. At least, it had been recently uploaded. I had turned it off and shut off my computer immediately. I'm ashamed to admit that it was not out of concern for Kathy, but because I was afraid of what would happen to me if I was caught watching what was technically child pornography. It was weeks before curiosity and a sense of stupid teenage heroism I could be the one to finally figure out what happened to Kathy overcame me, and I returned to the same website. She was surprisingly easy enough to find. She was featured in lots of videos under stage names like Kathy Cafe, Kitty, and the like. It was no use. All the videos took place in the same basement, on the same bed. The videos were all the same, more or less. Kathy wearing a costume, Kathy and another girl, Kathy and two men. There were some fringe, interesting videos starring her too. Really weird ones, like Kathy getting banged by an amputee, or by an actor dressed like a horse. But I didn't bother watching them. Kathy never actively roleplayed though. Even when she was in costume as a nurse or whatever, she never even really spoke in any of the videos. I realised that she barely made a sound in any of them. No moaning or heavy breathing. Even when the other actors were inserting themselves and other things into her, there was no reaction from her. And every once in a great while, she would look into the camera. It wasn't a look of anger or resentment or pleading, as one might expect to see if she had been forced into porn. I finally identified it. It was resignation. I had to stop watching her videos after that. I was sure now that this was not of her own violation. She was kidnapped and forced into this life. But there was no way for me to prove that or to find out where she was. So I reported the videos to the police, but it came to nothing. They said they had no way of definitely proving who the girl was. I knew it was Kathy. They had just decided long ago she was dead and the case was cold. I tried pushing it, but they told me to back off. Kid, just think of her parents. Doing porn. You're not so just believing a kid is dead is more comforting. I tried tracking down the Ritters. My mum told me their names had been Harry and Laura, and with a quick Google search, it told me they were now living in Oregon. Mrs. Ritter, I said when a woman answered the phone. It's Max Page. Hello, Max, she said cautiously. She didn't remember me. We lived in the same neighbourhood, I explained. I knew your daughter. I think I've found her. The woman listened quietly while I told her what I had found and which website I had found it on. I don't mean to upset you, but your daughter's alive, and I bet you could find her if you went to the police. Click. The woman hung up on me. I thought the police officer had been right and gave up trying to bring attention to the videos. I stopped visiting the website and tried to put it out of her mind. But then I got an email. It was from the website's administrator, announcing a new feature to the website. Slightly revolted they still had my information, I quickly logged in to delete my account and unsubscribed from the site. And that's when I realised what the new feature was. It was gore porn. Almost unaware of what I was doing, an icy sense of dread crawling over me, I clicked to confirm my fears. The first video featured Kathy. I never wanted to watch it, but I knew I had to. Because of the title of the video, it had my name in it. It was titled, For Max. Kathy, quivering and crying, bent over the bed, a man straddling her holding a knife. Say what I told you to say, a woman commanded from off screen. This is for you, Max Page, Kathy said, and in an inhuman shriek, as the man split her abdomen open with the knife, splattering blood everywhere. He plunged his hand into the wound, drawing another scream from Kathy, and pulled her intestines and at least one of her organs, and they all spilled onto the bed. I threw up on the side of the bed before I managed to turn off the video. Kathy was dead because of me. No one had believed me when I said it was Kathy, and now she's dead. In the woman's voice, I recognised it immediately. It was the same voice that had answered the phone. The voice that belonged to Mrs. Ritter. Number 1. When I was 12, I came to the conclusion that everyone in the world, including my own family, was against me. I was never a problem child, but my parents sure treated me like one. For example, I used to need to be home by 5 p.m. every day. This clearly restricted my amount of playtime outdoors. I wasn't allowed to have friends over to play at the house, nor was I allowed to go over to anyone's. I had to finish homework directly after I came from school, no matter how long it took. My parents refused to buy me video games and forced me to read books and then write a report on them to prove I actually read it. Now, even though those rules listed above were quite frustrating for me as a child, that isn't what upset me the most. What really hurt was the lack of compassion on behalf of my parents. My mother was a bitter woman who always made me feel guilty for accidents or mistakes I've done. My father only knew one emotion: frustration. The only time he spoke to me was when he was screaming at me for receiving poor test scores or for beating me. But enough about them. Let's talk about the school psychologist. For his own privacy, we will call him Dr. Tanner. Like most junior high schools, a psychologist is always available on campus during school hours to assist any students in need of counselling, whether it is emotional, academic, social, behavioural, etc. To be honest, I've never seen any students talk with him. Every day I would walk past his office on my way to the cafeteria and peek through his door's little window. He would always be alone in there working on some paperwork. I guess that most kids were too afraid to speak about their problems to an adult who was practically a stranger. From this reason, it took me about 3 weeks to muster up enough courage to go to his office. May 2nd, 1993, was the day I decided to voice my troubles to Dr. Tanner. During lunch break, I stood in front of his office door and knocked. Through the window, I could see him raise his head, smile, and motion for me to come in. I did. He greeted me by introducing himself and asking for my name. Dr. Tanner was a very soft-spoken man who seemed to radiate kindness. In less than 30 minutes, I rambled to Dr. Tanner about how mean my parents were to me, how they didn't care about me at all. After a while, my voice began to quaver, and I stopped speaking. The psychologist listened patiently to my whole spiel, arms folded, head nodding. I half expected him to begin talking about how everything I just said was untrue and that my parents love me dearly, blah blah blah, but he didn't. Dr. Tanner leaned forward to me with a grin on his face and said, "You know, I'm the best school psychologist in the world, and I promise we'll fix this." I rolled my eyes. "Okay, but how?" I asked. "I have my ways," he replied. "I'm a man of my word. I promise that just within 1 month, the relationship between you and your parents will change for the better, forever." After a brief pause, he continued, "Although I do need you to make me a promise. You have to promise me that you'll come back to my office after school tomorrow and that you won't tell anyone that we had this conversation today. It'll be our little secret." I promised. The following day, I returned to Dr. Tanner after school. It was around 4 p.m. when I entered his office. After a warm welcome, he asked me to have a seat on the front of his desk once again. Upon sitting down, I watched Dr. Tanner close the blinds of the door's tiny window. "There," he smiled. "Now we have all the privacy we need." We began to talk about my likes, my interests, my favourite subject in school, my least favourite teachers, and things of that like. About an hour into the conversation, Dr. Tanner offered me a soft drink. I gladly took the offer, considering my parents never allowed me to drink soda. Dr. Tanner reached over to his mini fridge and fidgeted around before settling 2 open cans of soda on the desk. Afterwards, we continued talking about what my life was like, but it wasn't long before I passed out from whatever drugs he placed in my drink. It took me a minute or so to adjust from my blurred vision upon waking, and when it did, I had no idea what to think. I was handcuffed to a bed and my mouth was sealed with duct tape. I immediately began to panic, squirming and tugging at the cuffs, but gave up soon after. My eyes widening in disbelief after looking around the room, There were posters of superheroes pinned up along the walls and photographs of famous athletes. In the middle of the room there was an old television and Super Nintendo, various game cartridges stacked alongside it. I didn't know what to think. Here I am, in a room filled with the items most kids would die to play with. I probably would have cried from joy hadn't I been handcuffed to a bed frame. My stomach sank once again when the door opened and Dr. Tanner walked inside. He sat down on the edge of the bed. "Now, listen," he said. "Remember that I'm here to help you, and I would never hurt you, okay?" Dr. Tanner gently removes the tape from my mouth and then cuffs from my hands. My first instinct was to begin crying, but something about Dr. Tanner made me feel safe. He smiled at me. "You're going to be safe where we are. You're going to be staying here for a while," he continued. "And during this time, you're allowed to play with any toys in the room while I'm here. But when I leave the house, I need to cuff one of your hands back to the bed. You can still watch the television, but I want you only to watch the news channels when I'm away." I sat in silence. "So," Dr. Tanner yipped, slapping me on my knee, "you go ahead and lock yourself out. I'll be back when it's time for dinner." He got up from bed, walked across the room, clicked the TV's power button before locking the door behind him. Several more minutes passed before I realised that Dr. Tanner wasn't joking. All that was left for me to do was boot up the Nintendo and play Mario until nightfall. At about 7 p.m, Dr. Tanner returned from the room, carrying 2 plates of mashed potatoes and chicken strips. I finally gathered up the courage to ask him how long I'd been staying in this room. "Well, you'll be staying here about a month," he replied. "Give or take a few weeks. I just have some work I need to do." The following morning I woke to Dr. Tanner's hand patting my head. "Hey bud, you don't have to wake up right now if you don't want, but I'm going to need you to put this back on," he whispered, clamping the cold steel handcuff onto my wrist. I gazed up at him. He was wearing the same thing he wears to school every day. Before leaving his place, he placed the TV remote next to me and told me to turn it on and watch the news. The first thing I saw was when turning it on, it came and flashed across breaking news. An important looking police officer stood on a podium surrounded by people with microphones. I happened to begin viewing halfway through his speech. "A statewide Amber Alert has been issued as of this morning. We have several investigators working towards identifying potential abductors, but as of right now, there is not much evidence. Factually, members state that the boy had been last seen around 4 or 5 in the evening on..." I began to feel nauseous as a photograph of me appeared on the screen. It was my yearbook picture from last year. Captions of the photograph displayed my name, age, my school, and my town. Above the pictures were alerting titles: "FBI begins searching for child" and "Kidnapped suspect unknown" and "Potential runaway." The live footage continued and 2 figured, I soon realised, as my mum and dad stepped onto the podium. Both appeared to have reddened eyes, tears streaming down my mother's face as she took the microphone. I had never seen so much emotion come from my mother before as she wept on live television, stuttering on sentences such as, "Please return my baby back to me," "I'm so sorry," and "Please come home to us." When my father took the microphone, I nearly expected his attitude to be stone cold, but he also had tears in his eyes. He pleaded to the world to bring his son home safely, and lastly, begged for my forgiveness. "I know I haven't been the best father, but god damn it, I do wish that I had been now. Please, bring my boy back." I turned the power off shortly after. My emotions were mixed as I had never seen my father cry. I felt miserable that my parents were being put through this, but at the same time I felt relief. I now knew how much my mum and dad loved me. Nearly 4 weeks had passed and Dr. Tanner had been treating me with utmost respect. He leaves me in the morning cuffed to the bed frame, but returns in the afternoon to eat lunch and dinner with me, talk and play games. I never would have guessed how good Dr. Tanner was at playing Monopoly and Scrabble, but one morning when Dr. Tanner woke me up before heading off, I noticed a stern look on his face. I also realised that it was 3 hours earlier than when he usually wakes me. You need to watch the television today. No exceptions. I want you to keep the television on all day and pay close attention to it, he stated grimly. I, of course, complied and watched him exit the room. About 2 hours later, a breaking news segment interrupted the toothpaste commercial I was watching. The title, Human Remains Found. 2 men in suits stood beside one another and began speaking. We are displeased to bring up such unfortunate news this morning regarding our missing child case from earlier this month. One of the men bowed his head while the other one, speaking, shuffled through some papers. He continued, remains of a body have been found in a garbage bag beneath a highway overpass. The body appears to be that of a child, although not much of it is left. The body appears to be decapitated and much of it burnt to ash and bone. The screen shifted over a helicopter view of the freeway, dozens of police cars gathering near the bottom of a tall overpass. The man's voice could still be heard. Within a bag, police found a junior high school identification card labelled as such. The screen showed the school ID card I always kept in my backpack. The plastic was sort of melted away, but my photograph and name were intact. After 2 men dismissed themselves, the camera panned over to my parents. They were sitting among reporters. My mother's face held a painful grimace as my father socked his head down to his knees. I shut the TV off. Dr. Tanner returned home very late. He hurried into the room, uncuffed me, and placed a bottle of fizzing water in my hands. He placed his hands on my shoulders and smiled. I made you a promise, didn't I? I nodded, tears squeezing away out of my eyes. You need to make me a promise again, he whispered. He told me I needed to drink all the water in the bottle and it would help me sleep, and that from here on, I am never to tell anyone that I ever met him. I promised. I told you I'm the best school psychologist in the world, didn't I? He was right. I woke later that night to find myself lying in the middle of a park, stars shining brilliantly across the night sky. I recognised the park. It wasn't too far from my school. A mile or so down the road, I saw my house. The lights were off inside, but I could make out my father sitting on the step leading to the front door. I hesitantly called to him. He lifted his head slowly, but when he saw it was me, he sprang to his feet. He ran towards me, yelling my name. My mother erupted from the house behind him. Dr. Tanner was right. Things had changed with my family and I. My parents smiled more often and treated me lovingly. I could not ask for a more perfect ending. Every now and then I see Dr. Tanner on campus talking to and from his office. Rarely do we ever make eye contact, let alone speak to each other, but sometimes he'll shoot me a wink and a smile. I'll always keep my promise to him and pretend I never met him, but there's always one question forever floating in my mind. Who did he decapitate and throw off the overpass? Hi guys, thanks for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Good night.